Good morning friends, welcome to EduSet Live lecture. Dear friends, today we are going to talk about women and paintings in modern India. It's a part 2. First part we have already discussed, and in today's session we'll talk about women and paintings in modern India. So to discuss this topic, we have once again with us Dr. Chughtai Webb. She is assistant professor at PGDAV Evening College, University of Delhi. So without wasting any time, I would like to welcome our guest, Dr. Chughtai. Ma'am, welcome to EduSet Live lecture.
Thanks a lot. Welcome friends. I am here once again to continue the topic women and paintings. In the last lecture, I had discussed with you as to how there was a gradual evolution of paintings, particularly during the time of English East India Company's rule. This is not to say that painting was not there prior to the Britishers came, but because I am dealing with you the period of modern Indian history, and therefore I focused from 1750s onwards, and we discussed various developments that took place in the field of painting. Then we also discussed the various schools of art as they developed, starting from the Victorian era and then the Bengal school of painting. And then I was discussing with you the paintings from 1940s onwards, and how women were a very important subject of this very important endeavor of artists, and how the theme of depicting women also underwent change as the history was progressing from colonialism to nationalism and then independence, and then a number of different themes that came about after 1947. Now, continuing from where I had left, we were going to discuss the paintings of M.A.R. Chughtai, because this again reflects some kind of synthesis that was taking place. So, as you can see in the slide, this painting which is titled Radha and Krishna. Now, this is a different kind of a depiction. As you can see that Krishna is not donning the traditional Mayur Pank in the hair, and Radha also has been depicted differently. So, M.A.R. Chughtai, who was a prominent painter in Lahore, he was trained at Mayo College of Art, and after partition he continued to remain in Lahore. However, he painted interestingly a number of Hindu, Buddhist, Islamist and non-religious themes, and that was the beauty of his art, and most of the themes that he picked up were related to South Asian subcontinental cultural heritage. So, what we find in his painting is some kind of a synthesis, and his themes were quite similar to those of the miniature paintings, and still his style was infused with modernism. So, here you see that some kind of an experimentation was already taking place from 1920s onwards, where the themes that were picked up were very much traditional, and one could even compare those themes to the miniature art paintings of the Mughal times, but then the way they were depicted had many modern elements attached to them, and therefore, as you can see in this painting that is Radha's dalliance with Krishna, there is a different kind of a portrayal where their meeting is shown differently, and it is not completely different from the miniature tradition, but then it is also not completely similar. And also the painting is not titled Radha and Krishna, it is titled Dream. So, therefore, a lot is left to the imagination of the viewer, and this also has some kind of a universal appeal. So, it could be any two people who are in love meeting together, and the way the expressions would unfold, rather than kind of reducing the two individuals to the traditional portrayal of Radha and Krishna. Then the dream also enhances the romantic angle and imagination of the subject. Therefore, both the figures are free from stylized preconceived notions and depictions, and there is a lot of freedom that has been exercised in showing the two individuals, thereby indicating the element of modernism in this 1940s painting. Then another example that one can give is that of the image of Radhika, which again you can see on your screen. In this, again a painting by M.A.R. Chughtai, Radhika is not portrayed in the traditional form where she is surrounded by gopis, or she is kind of dancing her way to Vrindavan. Quite a different kind of a portrayal where Radhika is shying away into the night to elope. So, a lot of experimentation has gone into depicting the image of Radha eloping at night, and also shows marked departures from the traditional miniature paintings where Radhika is shown going to meet Krishna in a more suggestive way, and also accompanied with gopis. Then, having discussed the kind of experimentation that was going on in 1940s and the way women were being portrayed differently, now I would go to the next very important milestone of the lecture, and that is a detailed description on women inspirational painters. So far, we have discussed both men and women as painters as they evolved during 19th, 20th centuries. But now the scope of discussion will revolve around three prominent women painters. And they also correspond to the different eras of modern Indian history. So, for example, we have Sunaini Devi from 1875 to 1962 was a lifespan. Then Amrita Shergill from 1913 to 1941, and then Anjolie Ela Menon of 1940 onwards. So, I would be taking up individually these three painters and then try to analyze as to how the themes that were picked up by these women painters were different or they were not different, and what were the differences, these differences had to say about feminism and gender identity. Now, coming to the issue of women artists, the project of seeking out women artists who have been excluded so far from the canon has also encouraged a redefinition of art practices themselves. So, therefore, the emphasis is on finding a more holistic approach to art where not everything is appropriated by the male artists. So, one has to talk about the female space in a more open and non-conformist manner. Then, by encouraging scholars to seek out these forgotten women, this kind of a study would also help us understand that there is no one female art or there is no one style of art that was being adopted by women, but rather art shapes and is shaped by culture, and it also conveys cultural ideas about beauty, gender and power. So, this overall influence of gender, culture, power and of course politics, society, religion has generally resulted into an amalgamation of counter tendencies which have been picked up by women artists beautifully and in a more sensitive manner, and thereby they have also raised the issues and the questions of race, caste, class, subjugation, identity and of course patriarchy. So, it is in this context that we would be talking about Sunaini Devi, the woman artist of colonial India. She was of course a pioneering artist who is regarded as one of the first women artists in modern Indian painting era. and she was born in the famous Tagore family in 1875. Her uncle Rabindranath Tagore was the first Asian poet to be awarded Nobel Prize for Literature. Then she also had brothers who were quite well known for their art, like Abanindranath Tagore and Gaganendranath Tagore. They were both prominent artists, painters and founders of the Bengal School of Art. They were highly educated and attended the prestigious Calcutta School of Art. An exposure Sunaini Devi was never able to enjoy. Because being a woman, she was not as lucky as brothers, and therefore she did not receive any formal education. But still, the beauty of Sunaini Devi was that she refused to be cowed down by such discrepancies, and by the age of 30s, the artist in her became active, and she also got encouragement from her husband, and henceforth there was no looking back, and Sunaini Devi took up painting in a big way at the age of 30. She was the first artist to take inspiration from the village patta art. So, this village patta art, which was the traditional art form that was prevalent in Bengal countryside, and she had lot of inclination for following the distinct line form, angles, and also this was added to the creative imagination which she always had, and therefore she raised the patta art to a whole new scale, and an art form that was being practiced by the village folks was practiced by her, and it was raised to the level of a classical art. So, therefore, she not only became the first woman artist, but also she experimented and she used her own imagination, and she looked around what was available indigenously without being inspired by the Western school of art, which was quite popular at that time and which her own family members were quite attracted to. Then another thing that has emerged from my research on her paintings is the themes of domesticity that are quite prominent in the paintings that were made by Sunaini Devi. The subject matter of her art belonged to the private inner world. She mostly painted scenes of the domestic household, drawing from her own life and struggles. And in most of her paintings, one can see some kind of loneliness, melancholy, and a longing for freedom. But at the same time, there is a simplicity of color and composition, just like the early Indian miniatures. And as I would be sharing with you some of her paintings, like the seated woman and the woman with a pet, you can for yourself explore these characteristics that I have described just now in a number of her paintings. Like in this painting, woman with a pet, you can see that the colors that are used are quite subtle and not many colors are used, and the way a woman is shown sitting in a household and loneliness is quite apparent in the figure, and she thinks that there is no one else to talk to her but one lone parrot, and she decides to spend her leisure time talking to that parrot. Then another painting, a seated woman. Here again you can see the loneliness that is implicit in the overall frame of the painting. The woman is not surrounded by many things or many objects or even any person who is sitting with her. There is a complete vacant space, and in that you can see the lonely image of a woman sitting all by herself. Then another theme that one can come across in her paintings is that of Viraha. Viraha means that when you are waiting for someone. So here you can see on the slide how a woman is brooding and is longing, looking aimlessly at the sky and probably waiting for someone. Here again it is the woman who is shown all by herself. So this attempt to show loneliness of a woman was kind of a deliberate attempt to probably reflect back on her own life. So this Viraha and domesticity became very prominent themes in the paintings of Sunaini Devi, and the feeling of separation, which has been portrayed adequately in most of the paintings, comes alive. As has been pointed out by Dr. Stella Kramrich, who is an American art historian, a specialist in Indian art as well as Hinduism, and Dr. Stella has conducted a number of studies on women and girls. So Dr. Stella remarks that the portrayal of a fully grown, fully ripened life wearing dark red or dark green saris and donning round girlish faces kind of depicts that the saris are not made of cloth but of expressions, and most of the paintings show the motherly affection as well as the longing, waiting, and most of these feminine qualities are kind of depicted without taking adherence to many other objects that were utilized by a number of painters of those times. So the pensive, mysterious young girls or women who have learnt the secrets of life, and everything lies hidden in their own psyche, in their own self, and there is no one to share all that with them. So the world is definitely veiled by the saris that they are donning, and their gaze, which is peeping to the sky, again talks of loneliness. Then some other examples that one can give is the paintings are Milkmaids and Radha and Krishna. Here again you can see in the paintings on milkmaids, there is lot of emphasis on showing what women are carrying. They are carrying pots on their heads, and that's it. So they are focused on the job at hand, and they are not to be disturbed or to be distracted by things other than this in life. Similarly, the painting on Radha and Krishna again has the Radha is hiding behind Krishna, and the use of color indicates that how there is not much else to be explored or to be talked about. Therefore, the overall emphasis on using lesser colors, on simplicity, and on showing roundness of figures as well as folds of saris creates an altogether different kind of an impression, quite different from the miniature painting style that was that had been initiated by her in some of her earlier paintings. Now, the next important woman painter that we would be talking about is Amrita Shergill. Here, first let us talk about the background of Amrita Shergill. She was born in 1913 in Hungary, and one of the eminent artists of India. She is sometimes also referred to as India's Frida Kahlo. She not only studied painting from the National Superior Paris, but she also returned to India in 1934 and remained here till she died in 1941. So therefore, after acquiring essential painting skills from abroad, she thought it best to experiment her art in India, and she never went back to settle again. She was quite receptive to the new styles as well as the new ideas and the influences. So therefore, while she had learnt the technique in Europe, but she was quite impressed and influenced by the Ajanta frescoes as well as the Kushana sculptures. and also miniature paintings. So therefore, what one finds in her art is a steady flow of ideas as well as a composite image that emerges, because she imbibed these different styles beautifully, and she not only assimilated certain principles of French school of art, but also added her individual expression to her essentially European training in painting. Then Amrita chose to paint on a wide variety of subjects, like the sketches of men and women as well as landscape, and a number of diverse themes. However, amongst all her paintings, it was those around women and their activities which are remarkable and are well appreciated. So therefore, most of the paintings that Amrita painted, they depict females and they also depict females lost in their own world. They also depict the kind of loneliness, and also some of the paintings depict celebration of life in a very different way as was being done by the other painters of those times. So therefore, besides some of the self-portraits that Amrita made, she also indulged in paintings of females in the family, from her own family, friends, as well as village women, because she also used to spend a considerable part of her time in the countryside, and she was a keen observer of village women who found a space on her canvases. It is also interesting to see the transformation that both the artist in Amrita underwent, as well as the subjects in her painting. They also underwent a transformation during the course of 10-15 years, and from the time when she started painting in Europe and from the time she moved to India, there was a massive change that came about in both her style as well as in the subjects of painting, which clearly shows that how a woman artist is not bogged down by a particular style or trend or theme, but she is quite experimental and vivid in the portrayal of such experimentation as well as confidence. Now, when Amrita first started her art, she started off with sketches, and soon she moved to self-portraits. She then progressed to paint family and friends, to finally dedicating most of her paintings to village women when she moved to India. So this gradual transformation is clearly visible in most of the collections that one can talk of. Now, why she was more interested or focused in projecting women in her paintings, the reason was clear, that she found women to be cloistered, leading shackled and divided lives through which they moved like shadows. And this kind of shadow-like depiction of women is also clearly visible in many of her canvases, and most of the paintings depict a shade of sorrow, thoughtfulness, which prevails universally in her paintings. So there was an absence of happiness or gaiety in most of her paintings. Either the mood was somber, or the mood was, thinking deeply about something, or sadness was implicit. So all the female figures that were painted by her, particularly those of women, have lackluster eyes. So the shine was missing in the eyes of women. Again, an expression of resignation to the fate. So whatever is happening to them in their lives is kind of accepted by them with a disheartening and resignation kind of an expression, which was clearly visible from the faces. Now, talking about the self-portraits of Amrita, Some of the self-portraits have depicted the beautiful side of Amrita, and there is a significant projection of her personal image in most of these portraits. Most of these were oil paintings which used bright colors, and they had a happy theme, which again was quite unusual because the way she was depicting the lives of women of the countryside, the happiness was clearly missing in those paintings. And the perfect example of this is the self-portrait, where she has painted herself against a flaming red background, revealing her desire to assert the individuality of her character in a dramatic way. So therefore, Amrita did not, she never needed to dramatize the canvas by adding lot of details. The dramatization that she achieved was done by using the red vibrant color, which in itself is symbolic of power, sexuality, and it is in that background that she painted her portrait, thereby signifying her hidden desires, and the dramatization was achieved by using that simple single red tone. Then these qualities can also be seen in some of her other self-portrait that she painted between 1930 to 1931, because this was a time when she was quite interested in devising portraiture. Then, as you can see in some of these portraits, there is an emphasis on happiness, the smile, the vibrant glow, and the entire image of Amrita seems to be coming out strongly and vividly, and she is kind of dominating the entire frame. The entire frame, the vacant space is very less. As you can see, it is the overarching figure and smile of Amrita which is prominently displayed. Then next we would be talking about the changing styles that she kind of experimented with, and how there was a step forward from self-portraits. So soon she moved beyond self-portraits, and her early paintings display a significant influence of the Western modes of painting, especially as practiced in the Bohemian circles of Paris, because it was here that she had imbibed the various techniques of paintings in her beginning of her career. So therefore, most of the canvases, they showed young girls, and the painting on the young girls was also awarded a gold medal at the Grand Salon of 1933, which again was a great achievement for those times. Now, in this painting, Amrita's sister Indira sits on the left, dressed in a fashionable European clothing, while the partially undressed figure in the foreground is a French friend. As you can see in on the slide in this painting, that how there was a kind of a different portrayal of her sister and that of a European friend who was sitting in the background. Now, the two women, as you can see in this painting, they kind of depict split personality. While one is shown as poised and confident, the other has a more awkward kind of an expression, with her face hidden beneath her unkempt hair, and therefore it is widely assumed that this painting depicts the duplicity of a woman's life, or the two sides of a woman's life, or probably the two sides of Amrita's life herself, as we are all divided individuals at various points of time. Now, having discussed these paintings, I need to take a break, and I would be joining again with a more detailed description of some more paintings and how the theme of womanhood emerges in these paintings. Thank you. Welcome back. We were discussing dichotomy that was quite visible in many paintings of Amrita. So, another example that one can give of dichotomy is the painting titled Three Girls. This painting was made in 1935 and it shows three young Indian women sitting passively as if indulging in some kind of a reflective thinking for their future, and these are rural women who were dressed in brightly colored saris, and the mood is not joyful. The shadows on the wall suggest that the girls' future lives, complete with their new families, with their in-laws, with their husbands, may not bring the happiness that their culture has taught them to dream of. As you can see in these on the slide, in this painting, the way I have described you, the girls are wearing bright colors, which symbolizes some kind of a celebration, festivity, and of course they should not look dull. But if you minutely look at the expressions on their face, then you can kind of speculate how there is a lot of sadness, and also there is lot of confusion that is prevalent, but nothing can be done about it, and life must go on and they must fall in place. Then another example of interesting painting made by her, that is Hill Women. Hill Women was another example of the same depiction of females, a passive, a melancholic mood in most of the images that were static. They were not moving, they were stable. And with paintings like Hill Women and the Three Girls, Amrita experimented with the use of shadows to create rounded forms. So, as you can see in this painting on Hill Women, the women are shown along with the shadow at the back, and there is again it's no more important to show very clearly the expressions on the face of women, because the overall darkness that prevails on their faces in itself completes the story as to how there is not much adventure or excitement or gaiety that is there in the lives of these rural women. Then another example, that is Bride's Toilet. Again, you clearly you can notice the use of shadows which are there, the shadows behind the images of women, and how again all the women are lost somewhere. They are thinking probably about the life that lays ahead for the bride, and even the bride is lost in her own thought. There is hardly any element of excitement or an element of satisfaction or happiness at having achieved this stage in life. So, life again has come to a standstill, but again the show must go on, and therefore women are they end up doing what they are doing. So, the sadness and the state of helplessness continued to dominate her most of her canvases, especially while she was showing women in indulging in various activities or women as part of families. The painting Bride's Toilet has typical characters of her style. Girls are shown having lackluster eyes, so much so even the bride has no brightness in her eyes. So the expression of resignation is very much there, and despondency is writ large on their long drawn out faces. So despite picking up the theme of women time and again, Amrita was not kind of able to get rid of this kind of a stylized depiction. And by 1936, when Amrita was exposed to a number of Ajanta frescoes, paintings, then this again left a deep impression on her style and color schemes, and this influence is clearly visible in the painting The Bride's Toilet, because as you can see in this painting The Bride's Toilet, the colors that are used are typically the ones that are found in Ajanta frescoes. The use of ochre, the use of beige in combination with brown to give it that kind of neoclassical look was quite visible in these paintings. Then continuing our discussion on Amrita's style, there was definitely a simplification of physique, which was again a remarkable departure from the style of miniature art, and there was a lot of emphasis on a clear definition of line, form, and also a firmly molded form. So nothing could be left to imagination, but things had to be set straight and the molded form was clearly visible. Then one also comes across a perfect blending of Western techniques as well as Indian spirit, which no other painting till then had been able to achieve. So she laid the foundation of modern Indian art, and being a woman artist, this was no mean achievement. The painting, which shows a young bride surrounded by female relatives as she prepares for marriage, shows a pale, weakened body of a bride contrasting strongly with the rounded figures of the figure to the right, which shows that there is a difference in the way a young girl looks and the way other women who are depicted in the painting look. So you can clearly see the roundness and the fullness in bodies of women who are surrounding her, whereas the bride's body looks pale and quite not substantially grown, again depicting the kind of marriage scene that must have been going on. So now coming to the next important female artist that I would be discussing, that is Anjolie Ela Menon. She needs no introduction, a very prominent and famous artist of post-independence India. She was born in 1940 in Burnpur, West Bengal, and having graduated in English literature from the University of Delhi, she moved to Paris on a scholarship from the French government. She also experimented in a number of techniques, oil mediums, acrylics, inks, computers, even photography and collage. And there were wide influences on her work, like those of Van Gogh, Expressionists, M.F. Hussain, and of course Amrita Shergill. Then traveling wide gave her a lot of experience and exposure, and many of her works, as you will see in the coming slides, they were inspired by visits to Romanesque cathedrals as well as churches in France, Greece and Russia, and therefore there was also a reinforcement of Byzantine influence which she imbibed from Greece and Russia. She has painted many women-centric paintings, again trying to show the inner self of women, and again trying to show the contradictions. So it is not that the emphasis is on beauty, but the emphasis is more on showing these contradictions and divisive tendencies. While on the one hand a woman is shown as a tender, but at the same time as a pillar of strength in the face of adversity, then many of her paintings depict the sensuous side of women, but again as a tigress as well when it comes to protecting her family. And so while on the one hand the materialistic love of ornaments is shown, but at the same time as a monk when it comes to caring and giving. So these dichotomies and different kind of contrary depictions go hand in hand in most of the canvases of Anjolie Ela Menon, and an essential part of a woman, that is the caring mother who can be sensuous at the same time. This was also a very interesting theme that came about. So her women are usually sensuous with well molded figures and an earthly attraction. So this sensuous nature along with the motherly affection is depicted in many of the canvases simultaneously. The two great examples of this that one can talk of are the mother and child, and then another portrait of her own daughter-in-law and granddaughter, which is titled Vandana and Madhavi. Now, as you can see in this painting on the mother and child, as you can see on the slide, as I was telling you, there is a lot of emphasis on the motherly affection, and you can very well see in this painting that how there is a heaviness of the baby that can be felt. So the way a baby is painting and how the way a mother is able to handle a heavy baby along with motherly affection and care is clearly visible in this painting. Then in her painting Vandana and Madhavi, she reiterates the beauty of a woman, yet she displays the firm grip that a woman has on the child. So as you can see in this painting, the heaviness of woman is the heaviness of baby is clearly visible, but again the beauty of woman is not compromised by the heaviness of baby, and both go along each other. Then another depiction, important painting of Anjolie Ela Menon, that is Devi or Kali. As you can see in this is a classic example where instead of the traditional head of a demon, she holds a head with almost a portrait like face of the infamous Veerappan. So this woman can also be read as symbolic of a woman as is infused with Shakti. So even though the face is quiet, the intensity of emotion is clearly visible, as you can see on this slide. There is no ferocity or wildness that can be attributed to the expression on the face, but then the overall depiction shows conveys the message clearly. So Kali, as the Hindu goddess of death, time and doomsday, who is often associated with sexuality and violence, but is also considered a strong mother figure and symbolic of motherly love. Now Kali also embodies Shakti, that is feminine energy, creativity and fertility, and is incarnation of Parvati, that is wife of great god Shiva. So all these qualities were clearly visible in that canvas. Now another marked departure in the paintings of Anjolie Ela Menon that one can talk of is that of Mother Teresa caring for Christ. So here again you can see a different kind of a depiction altogether, where the representation is more like medieval Byzantine. The painting that was made in 1998, you can see in that painting Mother Teresa holding Christ's body in her lap. Now this displays upholding the values of Christianity in a world which is witnessing a lot of degradation, a lot of chaos and a lot of violence in the society. So therefore, this kind of an unusual portrayal shows that how even religion is not safe on its own or is not complete on its own. What needs more is compassion. What needs someone or the world needs someone who is caring and giving, and this is clearly symbolized by the image of Mother Teresa. So a different kind of a portrayal. Then another example that one can give is that of the painting of Maya. The painting titled Maya, she employs both myth and reality, which shows Maya and baby Gautama depicted in an unusual style, which is inspired by Buddhist tankas. So Maya, when she dreamt that she got impregnated while a white elephant entered her womb through her right side. So, but still she died after childbirth and again reappeared in Buddha's life, guiding him through his trials and difficult times. As you can see on the slide, this Maya and Buddha. So the entire story comes alive, and the use of color shows the use of orange in the background shows the kind of enlightenment that was already there once Buddha was conceived and he was growing up. Then another interesting example is that of Mariam, where in this painting, Mariam and Christ, they remind the religious icon that constantly adorn Orthodox Christian churches. So Mariam's gently shut eyelids reflect the kind of compassion and love that Mariam felt for her son, the baby Jesus. And the halos behind their heads also emphasize the divine spirit, as you can see in this slide. Now, another interesting example that one can give is the image of Tara, where the artist depicts a brilliant technique in her version of Tara, who uses her Shakti to save Shiva. And one hand on the belly suggests a new birth, rebirth, a new kind of a beginning, as you can see on the slide. A more modern and unusual, non-conventional portrayal of Tara. Now, coming to a number of other experiments that were indulged in post-independence in the field of painting, there were several schools of art in India that had provided access to modern techniques and ideas. So, one must mention a group of 6 artists like K.H. Ara, H.A. Gade, M.F. Hussain, S.H. Raza and F.N. Souza, who founded the Progressive Artists Group, a group that was aimed at establishing new ways of expressing Indian art in the post-colonial era. Though this group was dissolved in 1956, but it profoundly changed the ethos of Indian art. And modern Indian art typically shows the influence of Western styles, but it is often influenced by Indian themes and images as well. And this is the beauty of Indian art. So while F.N. Souza used the expressionist style to illustrate Indian social life, M.F. Hussain utilized a modified Cubist style to create narrative paintings. So, now, having discussed the various art forms and the important women painters as well as men painters, I would now like to conclude the lecture by saying that how it is important to not only look at paintings but also understand and explore paintings, because they mirror social structure and they also redefine the portrayals in various ways. The works of all these pioneering artists have reflected on the social structure which existed during their times. And as has been shown by a number of canvases, the kind of social change, the political change that was going on, and even the economic change post-globalization is clearly visible in many of these portrayals. And the colonial period definitely had a marked influence on the art tradition in India, whereby women were made the prime agency for mediating the notions and also contested debates on nationalism, cultural, historical and regional bonding, as well as raising the issues of modesty, thereby complicating artistic aesthetic styles. Within this discourse of debates, reformulations and reactions, women artists were also expressing themselves. And in general, women painters were not many, as you have seen, but and this was in sharp contrast to rising number of men. But there were many women in performing arts. So if one talks about singing or dancing or even for that matter movies, dramatics, the number of women artists were much more, but sadly not so in painting. Men artists attempted to promote their ideas through the vehicle of women. Some of them encouraged the women to become artists themselves, while others used the image of women to evoke ideas of nationalism, evoke ideas of beauty, rebellion, or patriotism, tradition, as well as modernity. So therefore, women always remained important, either as the subject or as painters themselves. And during the 20th century, things definitely began to change, not only for women artists but for women across the domestic and public spheres. A new women's movement with an emphasis on the advocacy of equal rights, organizations devoted to women's interests, and a new generation of female protagonists and artists has generally changed the situation all around. And these social shifts began to emerge particularly after 1990s. They have propelled women more into workforce, and they have also exposed them to socio-political professional transformations that earlier were only limited to men. So therefore, it is very imperative to not only look at the art world in passing reference or as some kind of an entertainment, but also to understand the kind of social changes that are implicit in these various art forms. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much for this productive session. Thank you, viewers, for watching our show. We will be having more session. Till then, goodbye. Take care. Thank you.